We'll get this show on the road. We have got a lot we want to pack in to today. First of all, let me welcome our JAST members and our JAST supporters who are in the room. And on behalf of the entire organization, a very special welcome for Ambassador Yamada and Consul-General Watanabe and our very respected Senator Bill Hagerty, who's a great friend of our organization. On behalf of the organization, thank you all so much for being here with us today. We really appreciate it. So my name's Sammie Arnold, and I've had the privilege of leading this organization for about 6 months now. This is our day, our annual meeting to come together as an organization and be with fellow Tennesseans who care about this relationship between Tennessee and Japan. Just to give you a couple of quick notes to describe how well this year is starting off for JAST. I counted this up last night. So far this year, we have 17 new JAST members so far in 5 months of the year. Several of them are in this room. In addition, just last month, we had our largest crowd ever for our Cherry Blossom Festival. Last year, we had 50,000 for the Cherry Blossom Festival. I'm pretty sure we had about 60,000 this year. I don't know where Ginger is. But an event that has been great in the past continues to get even better. And at today's annual meeting, we have a packed house for an event that sold out weeks ago and had a waiting list that we couldn't even make it all the way through. And this is on a Friday before a holiday weekend, too. As I was extending invitations for this event, I've been telling several of you, I didn't get a lot of no's. So I believe I can feel that there's an increasing interest in Japan and Japanese culture among Tennesseans, and our organization intends to take advantage of that. So to our new JAST members, thank you. To our longstanding JAST members, thank you. And to our future JAST members who are in the room, the only favor I'm going to ask you is when you get home, check out our membership page, and you'll see what an inexpensive way that this is to support this relationship and to show appreciation for the impact the Japanese investment has had on this state. So I would like to quickly recognize our sponsors, all of whom I think are represented in this room. We have Bridgestone, we have Denso, we have Philip Morris International, and we have our great partners with the state, Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development. And next, I would like to recognize my board of directors, our JAST board of directors. This is the only group I'm going to embarrass. So if you're a JAST board member, can I ask you to just stand up real quick and get a round of applause? I want to acknowledge this group for their passion. They put tons of energy, tons of time into this. It's not for the prestige. It's definitely not for the financial compensation, which is $0. But they do this out of a sense of gratitude for everything that Japan has done for the state of Tennessee. And that's why I'm thankful for them. They're the reason that I took this job, and I'm thankful for them. And then finally, I don't even know, when I want to recognize my staff, I can never find them because they're always out running around working. But somewhere Ginger is here, somewhere William is here, somewhere Raina is here. If you see them, give them a pat on the back. They're doing an awesome job. Just a quick logistical note. We want you to go ahead and dig into your salads. We're going to have the program will have a short 10-minute break in just a second for the entrees to be served. But it's not rude. We want you to enjoy the food while the program is going on. So right now, I would like to hand the mic over to our host for today, the executive director of this beautiful venue, Miss Ashley Howell, who's going to welcome everybody. Thanks so much.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon. As Sammie mentioned, I'm Ashley Howell, executive director here at the Tennessee State Museum, and I welcome you as distinguished guests to your museum. The State Museum serves the state of Tennessee through history, art, and culture of Tennessee and for Tennesseans. We extend knowledge through our exhibitions and programs and serve all 95 counties throughout Tennessee. So in total, each year we serve over 200,000 students, visitors, teachers, coming to the museum, participating in our programs. So why is that important? And one of the things I wanted to bring to you today is, as a school kid, I was one of many who was exposed to the exhibitions at the Tennessee State Museum. And I came to an exhibition of masterworks from the Bridgestone collection. And it was at that exhibition I said, you know what, museums are a cool place. Maybe it's a place that I can continue just to learn. Little did I know it would become my career. So I find it fitting to have the Japan-America Society of Tennessee here at the Tennessee State Museum today to continue to provide engagement and understanding. I welcome you today and in the future to the museum. Thank you.
Thanks, Ashley. So right now, we're just going to take a brief pause for about 10 minutes so the entrees can come out and just enjoy the food and enjoy the company of the folks around you. I'll be right back shortly. Thanks. All right, everybody, if I could grab your attention one more time real quick. We will keep the program moving. I want to resume our program because there's a lot we want to pack in. We have a lot we want to get to. Once again, please continue to eat. I know the entrees are coming out right now. It's okay. Before I introduce our next very special guest, I first just want to point out, first of all, what a great thing it is that we have the consul for this region based in Tennessee. I admit that I myself was not aware of everything that our Japanese consulate does. But now after 6 months of getting to work with this office and with this staff, many of whom are here, by the way, they're incredible. To make a long story short, their presence here is a big deal for our Japanese companies. It's a big deal for our Japanese families, and it makes a real difference when it comes to economic development in this state. We're blessed to have them here. And that's why I'm excited to introduce our next guest. I had the pleasure of getting to visit with this gentleman a couple of weeks ago in his office here in Nashville, just right after he'd arrived in town to assume his post. And he and I visited and had a great visit. I'm happy to announce that I asked the Consul-General if he would be willing to serve as the honorary board chair of our JAST organization, and he agreed. And that's a big deal for us, and we're thankful for that, Consul-General. But I think you guys are going to love hearing from this guy. We're going to love working with him. I hope he enjoys working with us. I'll read a snippet of his bio here. Shinji Watanabe assumed his post as Consul-General of Japan in Nashville in April 2024. This is his second diplomatic assignment in the United States, following his first assignment at the Consulate General in Denver, Colorado. Trained in the Swedish language, he has also served at the Embassy of Japan in Sweden on 3 occasions, with his most recent assignment being the Deputy Chief of Mission. I'll pause right there. It's in your program if you guys would like to read a little further about his very impressive background. But right now, I'd like to open the stage for our new Consul General, Shinji Watanabe.
Thank you, Sammie. Members of JAST, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I'd like to express my deepest condolences to the family and friends of Dr. Jim Auer. We all lost a pillar of Japan-U.S. relations, and I regret not being able to meet him before his passing. It's a Japan-U.S. relationship and Japan-Tennessee relationship that I would like to talk about today. 2024 has already been a tremendous year for our two countries. It was just last month that Prime Minister Kishida visited to meet with President Biden and address Congress. The Prime Minister also visited North Carolina, to visit Japanese businesses and observe how Japanese companies contribute to the U.S. economy. And we can see how important Tennessee is to Japan-U.S. relations with the attendance of both Senator Hagerty and Ambassador Yamada. I would like to thank you both for taking time from Washington to be here today. I'd also like to thank Masami Tyson and Sammie Arnold for their leadership of JAST, along with all the board membership for their profound efforts to maintain and grow connection between Japan and Tennessee. I'm honored to become the next honorary co-chair of JAST along with Governor Bill Lee. I'm very grateful for all your support since I arrived just 1 month ago to take over as a Consul-General of Japan in Nashville. I knew I was going to love Tennessee even before I arrived here. Tennessee is blessed natural beauty, something that I learned to appreciate in my previous posts in Denver and Sweden. The people of Tennessee play lots of sports that I enjoy no matter where I am. And then there is the music. Music, especially acoustic music, has always been close to my heart. And when I arrived in Nashville a month ago, I found the fourth reason, your hospitality. I'm overwhelmed and impressed by the hospitality you all have shown me. Before arriving here in Nashville, I had a chance to visit some of the people over in Japan that have direct connections with Tennessee, and they all had great things to say about this wonderful place. I'm extremely grateful to witness the strength of relations between Japan and Tennessee on a person-to-person level. There are so many examples of close ties among the 8 sister city relationships between Japan and Tennessee. And I must thank JAST for organizing 2 of the most important events that help spread Japanese culture here in Tennessee, the Nashville Cherry Blossom Festival and Memphis Japan Festival, which give more than 55,000 Tennesseans a chance to experience Japanese culture firsthand every year. These kinds of cultural and personal exchanges are the foundation of Japan-Tennessee, Japan-U.S. relations. This is not only limited to a greater appreciation of cultural diversity, but it also develops hand in hand with unparalleled economic opportunity. Tennessee is home to about 200 Japanese companies, which has created about 60,000 jobs with more to come. I'm glad to hear that they continue to expand their presence with QP, Firestone Airlight, and Armada Nutrition growing their facilities. Since my arrival in April, I have had the chance to meet with local politicians all the way from town and county mayors to Governor Lee, and every one of them has highlighted the importance of Japanese businesses to this state. I would like to thank state and local leaders for their support for both Japanese companies and their employees, both Japanese and local. The connection between Japan and Tennessee has already created so much opportunity, and the future looks even brighter with new possibilities. I'm looking forward to the Southeast U.S. Japan Conference in Charlotte this year, and I'm very excited for the South Japan Conference to be held here in Nashville 2026. This month, a group from Knoxville, including Mayor Kincannon, will go to Muroran in Hokkaido. This fall, a delegation led by Mayor Okone will visit Kamakura. And in the summer, students from Zama will visit nearby Smyrna. These person-to-person exchanges will deepen mutual understanding and create exchanges that lead to further cooperation. As interdependence deepens through collaboration, people will cooperate rather than fight. And finally, when I found out I would be assigned to Nashville, a fragmentary but faint melody played in my head. I tried to remember what it was. It was the ballad of Davy Crockett. I remembered a song I had forgotten for decades. To my surprise, I even remember the Japanese lyrics. I felt as happy as if I had been reunited Tennessee, a place I had never visited. I look forward to working with you all in Tennessee to help more people join us in enhancing people-to-people exchanges and promoting mutual understanding, Japan, Tennessee, and the United States. Thank you very much.
Consul-General, thank you, sir. We're so happy you're here, Consul-General. As we transition into this next segment, which, first of all, I'm honored to even be a part of this next segment. I'm going to be introducing our board chair here, Masami Tyson. And Masami, for those of you that don't know, Masami and I worked together at the state level at TNECD for, 4 or 5 years. And we were great friends right off the bat. Masami is one of the primary reasons that I was interested in this role. And so just shortly after I took the job, Masami began talking to me about this legendary figure named Dr. Jim Auer. And Masami told me what an internationally respected giant, I think was the word Masami used, giant in the U.S. Japan space, who ran this very influential policy center at Vanderbilt for many years called the U.S. Japan Center. And Masami let me know that we needed to do something in his honor. And so that's how all this sprang forth. That was 4 or 5 months ago we started planning this. And so anyway, I'm honored as I've been able to read more and more about this gentleman. I'm so glad that we're doing this. And I want to welcome the JAST Board Chair, Ms. Masami Tyson.
So it is my distinct privilege and honor to open the next segment of our program, a special presentation for Dr. James E. Auer. As Sammie just mentioned, JAST had been planning this tribute to Dr. Auer for many months. We had asked Dr. Auer to deliver remarks. We were going to surprise him with special photos, some of which you are seeing right now, and you will see in the rest of this program, and letters secretly sent in by those that loved him and appreciated him. His grandchildren were going to join him at this event. Now, someone said that it was so much like him that he would go ahead and leave us at this timing, because he was so humble and was so reluctant to have us honor him like this. In fact, when I first approached him about this, he thanked me, and then he said that it was not necessary. He declined. And then he called about a week later to say that his good friend, Bob Arnett, that we have in the room today, had convinced him to change his mind. He still did not want to be the keynote, however. So on that condition, as long as there was a separate keynote, he would agree. Again, very Jim Auer. Now, I first met Dr. Auer about 30 years ago. Especially early on in my career, I had the privilege of having him meet with me. He listened to what I had to say, especially about my desire to play a role, contribute in U.S.-Japan relations, shared his stories and views, and all these things he did so generously. He wanted to help me in any way he could, and he believed in me. He also connected me to some amazing people, some of whom are in this room today. One of them is the first presenter, Torkel Patterson, who has flown in all the way from Japan for this event. Torkel also penned the beautiful obituary at Jim Auer's request before he passed, a copy of which can be found in your program. You will also find Torkel's extremely impressive bio in the program, but let me just share that Torkel and I met for the first time just a couple weeks ago in Tokyo to discuss this event and all things Jim Auer. And I have so appreciated getting to know him. The second presenter is my good friend Suzanne Basalla, who hails here from California You can also read about her distinguished career in the program, but Suzanne and I met when she was the CEO and president of the U.S. Japan Council, and I was on her board of directors. Now, she's recently stepped down from that role, so while we probably would have seen each other again at some point, that might have been it. But again, these recent events have provided an opportunity for me to spend more time with Suzanne and to get to know her better. And I had the wonderful privilege of getting to know Helen a little bit over the last month or so, who has graciously agreed to be with us today and deliver remarks on her dad's behalf. And this is Jim Auer, you see, bringing people to the same place for an important cause, focusing and shedding light on what really matters, just like he did for the two nations, and keeping us together and moving us forward. There is so much more I could say about Dr. Auer, but suffice it to say that he taught us all, he taught me, what it means to be a true leader, to invest in people, to be humble. And I submit to you that this time today is for him, but also it is for us to learn from him once again. Now with that, I pass the mic to Torkel.
Thank you, Masami. I really appreciated that pitch-perfect introduction to Suzanne and myself, and also the way you conveyed your love and affection for Jim, which I think many of us in this room all share. She mentioned the obit that's in the program, but actually it was partially written by me and also by Rich Armitage and Jim Kelly. And I'd like to read the opening part of it, if I may. You may have already read it in there, but I just want to, because I think the opening part is important here. Hopefully it's going to be in the Tennessean in the next couple days. But James E. Auer, gentleman, devoted husband, loving father, naval officer, ship captain, policymaker, scholar, professor, the bedrock of United States security relations with Japan. James Edward Auer loved God, his wife, and his children, and his grandchildren. A true American patriot, Jim loved the United States, the U.S. Navy, and Japan, in that order. I'm going to now read 3 letters. The first is from Rich Armitage, who served after he knew Jim Auer, later as Deputy Secretary of State. Although I was Jim's putative boss in the Pentagon, he was my mentor. To be with him was to realize his deep love for the U.S. Navy and his respect and affection for Japan. This was not just an admiration of the country and the people, but also a deeply held belief that our two nations were tied together in our search for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific region. To not engage in an alliance with Japan was to invite mischief, and worse, in the region. His professional achievements have been well documented and recognized by both the U.S. and Japanese governments, but his personal qualities, love of wife and children, his belief in God's grace, and his rock-solid belief in the innate goodness of his fellow man are what make him a man so worthy of emulation. I hope I can live up to the expectations which Jim has for each of us. May God bless Jim, his family, and all of us. Rich Armitage. And the next letter is from Jim Kelly, who later served as Assistant Secretary of State for East Asia. To the beautiful family and the multitude of friends of Dr. James E. Auer, it is a special honor to join so many respected colleagues in honoring Jim Auer. More than 40 years ago, with essentially no experience in Japan or with the United States policies involving that vital country, This former Navy supply officer was chosen to replace Rich Armitage as Assistant Secretary of Defense for East Asia and Pacific Affairs. Since I knew little, Armitage, then Assistant Secretary, advised me to rely on staff, including the late Rear Admiral Stuart Ring and especially Jim Auer, on Japan affairs. Within days, I received thick folders and speeches, testimony, and descriptions of everything involving Japan. And with a short note, similar to the one Jim sent 2 years later to then Lieutenant Harry Harris, Jim suggested his book would be useful to me if I needed to swat flies. Well, flies have not been a problem, but Jim's groundbreaking book, The Post-War Rearmament of Japanese Maritime Forces 1945 to 1971, has been held close to me through every one of those 40 years. In similar fashion, getting to know Jim and Judy and soon Tay, Helen, and John Ed was to know a very wonderful family. 2012, Judy and Jim traveled to Hawaii. They then sang the hymns at my wedding ceremony and joined our celebration. Sue and I wish deeply that we could be with you all in Nashville, but we join each one of you in love and respect. With aloha, Jim Kelly. Finally, from Dr. Michael Green, the professor and CEO of U.S. Studies Center at the University of Sydney. I was very sad to hear that we lost Jim Auer. I first met Jim in 1986 when I was a student at Johns Hopkins SAIS. My professor, George Packard, had set up a meeting for me to see Jim in his Pentagon office for my research paper. But I think Professor Packard's real purpose was for Jim to convince me to join the Ampo Mafia. These are Japanese-speaking custodians of the alliance. It worked. I had been wavering between sticking with Japan studies or doing what normal security experts do and focusing on NATO. It wasn't Jim's office that did the trick, that's for sure. I can still vividly remember how small it seemed for such an important mission. Rather, it was Jim's incredible combination of patriotism, passion for Japan, and kindness to me that sent me back to SAIS to declare Japan studies as my major. I later worked at the Pentagon and in the White House, where I was proud, like many others, to be building on the foundation stones set down by Jim in those pivotal years. He will be dearly missed. And there's Akie, Prime Minister Abe's wife. And these two ladies that are with him were interpreters at the U.S. Japan Technology Forum that occurred at Vanderbilt for more than 30 years. And they came to every one. And I saw the interpreters last week, and they were really urging me to give you all their very best. I'm sure Ambassador Hagerty had met some of them when he was Ambassador. Senator Hagerty had met them before, but it's great. And I just want to say that for me, Jim Auer was, next to God, I would say, was everything. Because if it wasn't for Jim, well, I certainly wouldn't be here now, but I also I would never have made Japan my career in a many variety of things. And Jim's family, Tay, Helen, John Ed, very important to me. And his wife, Judy, whom I'm sure many of you met, she's a really, really wonderful person. So thank you all for being here, and thank you for organizing this, Japan-American Society, and all of you, your presence here to support this. Thank you very much.
Like Torkel, like Masami, like Mike Green, I benefited from Jim's mentorship from early in my career. Jim believed in me, educated me, elevated my profile, expanded my network, encouraged me, and gave me the knowledge, skills, and confidence to follow in his footsteps as a Japan director at the Pentagon several generations later. Jim's willingness to go the extra mile for so many people, his selfless embrace of anyone who contributed to the U.S.-Japan relationship, and his particular attention to next-generation leaders is what we call in my home the Jim Auer rule of paying it forward. Jim cared for many, including those who went on to positions of incredible responsibility, like Admiral Harry Harris, the 24th Commander of the U.S. Pacific Command, and former U.S. Ambassador to the Republic of Korea. In a letter to Jim, Admiral Harris speaks of Jim's career-long impact on his life. He shares that when he served as aide to Commander Naval Forces Japan in the mid-1980s and was just starting this job, the admiral he worked for told him that if Jim Auer ever called, let him know immediately, and that Harry was to schedule Jim whenever he was in Yokosuka, Japan. The admiral explained to young Harry that no one knew the Japanese, Japan, or the Japanese maritime self-defenses better than Jim Auer. Admiral Harris writes in his message to Jim, "How right he was. From the time I first met you, I recall your kindness to this young flag lieutenant." In 1985, Dr. Auer signed a copy of his magnum opus to Harry, who says, "This book was a constant reference for me across my 40 years in the Navy, including 4 tours in Japan and senior positions involving U.S.-Japan relations." And he adds, "I treasure it to this day." Others, too, have commented on Dr. Auer's scholarship. Yo Osumi, who currently serves as Consul-General in San Francisco, talks about Dr. Auer as a leading intellectual and rare voice in the U.S.-Japan alliance. As a junior diplomat 30 years ago, Osumi-san attended salons where Dr. Auer and his friend, Ambassador Okazaki, taught not only about national security, but also history, philosophy, and national dignity. He describes them as 2 lone eagles standing tall in the draft of serious national security debates, and goes on in his letter to Dr. Auer, "Over time, a precious drip of water you and Ambassador Okazaki dropped has gathered into a mainstream." Many others in Japan have felt inspired by Jim. Jim's close friend, Yukio Tada, shares many good memories, including an intimate dinner in 2001 with Abe Shinzo, the future prime minister. Torkel and I had the privilege of joining that dinner. We look a little younger in the photo, and saw the respect that Abe-san had for Jim's views. Among his memories of Jim, Tada-san especially recalls one from just a few months after this dinner, when America was attacked on September 11th. Tada-san writes of Jim's empathy and visionary ability to help bridge the alliance with a so-called sympathy ad published in the Washington Post, with a powerful message of "We are with you" from Japan to the United States. Today, Tada-san wanted Jim to know his friends and followers also wish to say to him, "We are with you." Member of Japan's National Parliament, Hideshi Futori-sensei, shares the influence Dr. Auer had on him since his time at the U.S. Japan Center almost 20 years ago. Futori-sensei writes to Dr. Auer that, "These experiences have become very significant assets for me now as I work in the Japanese Congress. One of my goals in life is to become a man like you. You devote yourself to the public, and you have always treated everyone with respect." He goes on to say that he hopes to repay Dr. Auer's kindness by doing his very best to strengthen and maintain the U.S.-Japan relationship. I think that might be a corollary to the Jim Auer rule. We all feel that passion to contribute back. Similarly, Akihisa Nagashima-sensei, member of Japan's House of Representatives and chairman of the Special Committee on National Security, talks about his time in the U.S. Japan Center and becoming a member of the Auer School. He also writes of the overflowing affection from both Jim and Judy. Aki describes many things he learned from Jim as a patriot, a researcher, and as an individual, and notes the significant contributions to the alliance Jim made during his public service. He also speaks of how Jim guided and trained many leaders, Japanese leaders, at the Vanderbilt U.S. Japan Center, adding, "I am proud to be a member of the network of your students, which stretches like a mountain range, supporting Japan-U.S. relations in a multi-layered manner in politics, government, business, and media." Finally, Nagashima-sensei reports that Jim's long-standing encouragement for Japan is now bearing fruit in the areas of Japan's exercise of collective self-defense, Japan's improved relations with South Korea to build a strong alliance among the 3 nations for peace and stability in the Indo-Pacific, and towards revision of Japan's constitution to give pride to the Japanese self-defense forces and make the Japan-U.S. alliance cooperation further unwavering. Aki Nagashima writes to Dr. Auer, "The greatest thing I learned from you over these 30 years is your unwavering belief that advocating for and promoting the strengthening of U.S.-Japan alliance is not for the sake of the other party, but for the very interests of each party." I have one last letter received to reference, and that is from former Japan Ambassador to the United States, Ryozo Kato, who talks about Jim's tenure as the team captain during the golden era of the U.S.-Japan security relationship. And if you know Ambassador Kato, he can never resist a good baseball metaphor. He offers in his closing word for Jim, "Jim, you're the best gardener in the history of the U.S.-Japan alliance, one who never sought any limelight for yourself, but behind the scenes, you are the MVP." Thank you for allowing us to share the sampling of messages to Jim with you today. We also have the honor of hearing directly from Senator Hagerty, who is going to share his message to the Auer family. Thank you.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here. And I just thought to provide context, I had the great privilege of knowing Dr. Auer for a number of years before I really knew who he was. He always attended Japan-American Society of Tennessee events. I'd speak to him at the side of an event, but he never talked about nor ever bragged about his incredible accomplishments until one day it leaked out that I would soon be the U.S. Ambassador to Japan. Jim wrote me by email, actually he wrote you, Betsy, and said, "I need to meet with Bill now." And he began to unpack the tremendous knowledge that he had to share, the tremendous experience. Jim was a true treasure to the U.S.-Japan alliance, and I found him an invaluable resource in the job that I undertook prior to the current one. This is just a brief letter, but to Helen, Tay, and John Ed, on behalf of Chrissy and our children, I wanted to express our deepest sympathy to the Auer family. Your father, Dr. Jim Edward Auer, Commander U.S. Navy retired, was a pillar of U.S.-Japan relations. During his time in the U.S. Navy, in the Office of the Secretary of Defense, and at the Center for U.S.-Japan Studies and Cooperation that he established at Vanderbilt University, Jim truly raised our alliance to new heights. Indeed, as former ambassador to Japan and now U.S. Senator, I deeply appreciate that the strength of the U.S.-Japan alliance was made possible by the earlier accomplishments of trailblazers like your father. Our nation is eternally grateful for Dr. Jim Auer's contributions. Please know that your family is in our thoughts and prayers at this difficult time. Sincerely, Bill Hagerty, United States Senator. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator Hagerty. Next, we'll hear from Jim's daughter, Helen Girard. Anyone who spent time with Dr. Auer knew how proud he was of each of his children, and that his only daughter, Helen, was the apple of his eye. Her loving care of him throughout his journey surely let her father know how special he was. So we thank Helen for her devotion to the man that we knew as mentor, teacher, and friend.
That's me in that picture. So good afternoon, and thank you everyone for being here today. My name is Helen Girard, and my dad was Dr. James E. Auer. My dad would have been very honored, but also very humbled by this presence of everyone here. His entire life has been one intense study in the service of U.S.-Japan international relations. However, it wasn't actually one of his original plans. At one point, he considered becoming a Catholic priest, and another, a psychologist. But the Navy gave him the path through college and into service in other ways. Through that, he achieved so much and guided so many lives, international policies, and created lasting friendships personally and professionally. When my siblings and I were growing up, people would ask us what Dad's job was. I would always say something like, He works on U.S.-Japan international relations, and he knows a lot about the Navy stuff between America and Japan. Because as a youngster, that's all about, I could wrap my head around what he did. To our other friends, this was also too big of an idea, so the joke evolved that our dad was a secret agent of some kind. So it isn't a secret that beyond all of his lifetime achievements he accomplished, my dad just really, really loved the work he did. I am here today to say on his behalf, thank you for being here and encourage you all to continue this vision that JAST is founded on, growing in cooperation between countries, businesses, and personal connections. I was fortunate enough to be a part of the Japan Exchange and Teaching Program from 2007 to 2012. And during that time, I would meet up with Dad whenever he would visit Tokyo and occasionally shadow him at some of his meetings. So I feel extremely fortunate that I was able to witness Dr. Auer in action and see him in his element. In the spirit of my father, stand firm in what you believe in, but also be gracious towards other opinions, willing to listen and learn from other perspectives. Ask questions, do your research, find your friends and colleagues who support you as well as push you to go further. Be humble and thankful for every opportunity, as my father always was. And on his behalf, and with great respect, 本当にありがとうございました。
Okay. Just before we proceed to the next segment, one final note that I want to announce relative to this segment. JAST will be creating a new recognition that we plan to award each year at this event in honor of Dr. Auer, the Jim Auer Award, to be given to a Tennessean for extraordinary contributions in service of the U.S.-Japan relationship and whose character, integrity, and kindness embody the legacy of Dr. James Auer, which is just a small token of our effort to hopefully sustain the legacy of a great man. Helen, thank you. And next, let's transition to our next segment. Masami, you ready to introduce our guests? And so Masami's going to go ahead and take a seat, and I'd like to welcome Ambassador Yamada and Senator Hagerty up to the stage as well.
Ambassador and Senator, I've been told that you need to kind of face this direction for this microphone to work, so we'll just do a trial and error. But if you cannot hear us, if you could just kind of indicate to us, please. So while the microphones are being placed on the Ambassador and Senator, I would like to go ahead and introduce our two very distinguished keynote speakers for today. We have heard from the Senator already, but I will do his introduction at this point. First, we have Ambassador Shigeo Yamada. He is Ambassador Extraordinary and Plenipotentiary of Japan to the United States. Ambassador Yamada assumed his post in December of 2023. And Ambassador Yamada is not only a longtime veteran of the Japanese Ministry of Foreign Affairs, or MOFA, but also has been a key figure of U.S.-Japan relations and diplomacy. With this being his third posting to Washington, D.C., and also his positions in Tokyo at MOFA have also included Deputy Director General for North American Affairs and Director for the Status of U.S. Forces Agreement, among other key appointments during his extremely distinguished career. He was the Senior Deputy Minister for Foreign Affairs prior to assuming his current post and played a critical role in the success of the G7 summit meetings in Hiroshima, as well as other meetings. Now, Ambassador Yamada enjoys outdoor activities and is an avid runner. Our JAST Executive Director, Sammie Arnold, and I had hoped that he would be able to visit Tennessee during his tenure, so And so we are so delighted and honored on behalf of Tennessee to welcome you here today. Thank you for being here. And of course, we have Senator Bill Hagerty, who is the United States Senator for our state. You were elected into the Senate in 2020. While Senator Hagerty has been a lifelong businessman, he has also dedicated himself to public service. From 2011 to 2014, he served as the Commissioner of the Tennessee Department of Economic and Community Development, during which time major investments, or rather further investments and expansions by several Japanese companies, including Nissan and Bridgestone, occurred. Tennessee became the #1 state in the nation for jobs created through foreign investment, and being named State of the Year for Economic Development for an unprecedented 2 years in a row during this term. Now, prior to being elected to the United States Senate, Senator Hagerty was the 30th Ambassador of the United States to Japan. And Senator Hagerty is an Eagle Scout. Senator, I understand that it is because of you that we have been able to welcome the Ambassador here today, so thank you so much. And I'd like to share with the audience that when Dr. Auer gave me that initial acceptance for the speaker today, I turned to Senator Hagerty and asked him to be the keynote, and he immediately accepted. I went back to report this to Dr. Auer, and he was extremely pleased. So thank you, Senator. And thank you both of you for being here. So I'd like to start by asking Ambassador Yamada if you could please address the audience with any remarks as you wish to include your reflections on Dr. James Yamada.
Thank you very much, Ms. Samson. Senator, it's my great honor to be here with you. Let me first join everyone to extend or express my sincerest condolences to Helen, the family, and the loved of Dr. James Howell. Everybody agrees that without his vision of and commitment to Japan-U.S. alliance, our relationship wouldn't have grown to be this strong. So we all thank Dr. Howell. And my personal memory of Dr. Howell goes back to 1986 when I joined the Ministry of Foreign Affairs. My first post at the ministry was Japan-U.S. Security Treaty Division. The director of the office at that time was Mr. Okamoto, another legendary alliance manager, who very unfortunately passed away several years ago because of COVID complications. But I remember very well that there were late night regular telephone conversations between Mr. Okamoto and Dr. Howell. They coordinated security policies of Japan and the United States. So to the most junior officer in the office, Dr. Howell represented the United States, the American security policy. And I'm sure that that frequent telephone conversation between Mr. Okamoto and Dr. Howell ensured that Japan and the United States were closely together during the critical final years of the Cold War. And after that 1 year, I came to the United States for the first time. First 2 years to study, and then 3 years to work at the embassy. I returned to the United States in 2012, and as Masami said, this is my third time. But between that second time and this time, I was in Japan, and I was posted to the National Security Secretariat of Prime Minister Abe. And at that time, I had the privilege of working with Ambassador Hagerty. So I've been working on and off for Japan-U.S. relationship for nearly 4 decades. I can now confidently say, I can say with confidence that Japan-U.S. relationship is stronger than ever. And I'm sure we will have a chance to talk about Prime Minister's visit later in this conversation. But that visit raised Japan-U.S. partnership to even a new phase, even higher level. So I think I'm very lucky to be an ambassador at this time when Japan-U.S. relationship is so strong. But whenever I have this kind of occasion, what I say is that strong government-to-government relationship doesn't guarantee strong and stable bilateral relationship. There needs to be a solid basis on which you build that kind of bilateral relationship. And that foundation can only be built by robust and multi-layered bonds between the two peoples. Through business partnerships, academic exchanges, and other grassroots exchanges. People-to-people exchanges create the basis of strong bilateral relationship. So I am very honored today to be able to join you. In a way, I decided to join the last moment, so I feel like a gate passer in this fireside chat, but I am very much honored to be included to honor the great achievement of Dr. Auer, who worked not only on government-to-government relationship, but also academic exchanges, as I said, and people-to-people exchanges, and educating the younger generation to be a strong supporter of Japan-U.S. relationship. So, again, thank you very much for including me today.
Thank you. Senator, same question for you, or would you like to share some thoughts for the first, as the first opportunity to address this audience?
Well, I first would like to acknowledge you, Ms. Sammie. You've done so much yourself. In many ways, as they describe Jim Auer, I've never taken the credit or the limelight. I see you in the exact same way. You've done a tremendous job, and I think everybody here is associated with JAST appreciates you. So, round of applause. Ambassador, and I'm so pleased to call you Ambassador. I very much appreciated our relationship when you were in the National Security Secretariat. You've always been such an accomplished officer of administrative foreign affairs, an accomplished diplomat, and a national security expert. And you mentioned that you were fortunate to be here at this particular point in time, but I think we're all fortunate that you were here at this particular point in time. I'm very much happy to see you here, and I look forward to working with you. Consul-General, welcome to Tennessee. It's an important role that you play here, something that's a point of pride and honor for our state to have the consul located here. And we do everything in our power to make certain that you and your team are successful. So always look to me in my office and look to everybody at the state level to know that we're here to be supportive of your mission. And with respect to the relations that we enjoy with Japan today, I think that the testament that we had in Jim Auer says so much about the wonderful foundation that has been built over decades. The ambassador has been working on this relationship for 40 years. I began in 1988 when I was first sent to Tokyo to live there for 3 years. At that point, things have changed tremendously. I recall in 1988, from an economic perspective, Japan was literally on fire. Japan had just overtaken the Soviet Union to become the #2 economy in the world. If you think about the innovation that we saw coming from Japan, it was incredible. I would go to Sony headquarters in Ginza to see the new HD TV. Never seen anything like it before. A visit to Akihabara, where every electronic product known to man was demonstrated and on full display. People were coming from all over the world, even in a category like beer. Who could imagine innovation in beer? Japanese did. They invented a product called Super Dry. We saw a little company called Asahi go from 14% market share into the 20s overnight. It was amazing what was happening at that point in time, and in the world. At the same time, I was there for 3 years, from 88 to 91. We saw Tiananmen Square. The Berlin Wall came down, and the U.S. entered the Berlin Wall. And I departed Japan at that point in time, never left my heart. But by the time I got back in 2017, we were confronted with a very different world. Japan's economy was in a different place. The lost decades occurred. When I was in Japan in December of 1989, the Nikkei topped out.
the all-time high until recently, but then the price-earnings ratio was 60-1. The market was way overheated. What we saw was that market come to a reckoning. We saw a slowdown in the Japanese economy, even deflation. But I was very privileged to come back in 2017 at a time when the economy was beginning to turn, thanks to the hard work of Prime Minister Abe, his Abenomics program, which today I think many of the benefits of that are being realized. We also had an incredibly challenging national security situation. If you think about it, the Chinese in the East China Sea had surrounded the Senkaku Islands that were harassing Japan on a constant basis. I'm sure many of you remember President Xi coming and standing in the Rose Garden next to President Obama in 2015 and saying that he had no intention of militarizing the islands in the South China Sea that they were building. Remember, they were crushing coral reefs, pouring billions of tons of concrete in the ocean? No intention to militarize those islands. By the time I arrived in 2017, completely militarized. Sure, it's runways. They use those islands to harass everyone in the South China Sea. Things changed. If you think about the Quad relationship that we enjoyed, we brought that back to life. Prime Minister Abe's vision of a free and open Indo-Pacific, we got behind it. We pushed China out of the East China Sea. That stopped. Freedom of navigation operations across the Indo-Pacific, calm in the South China Sea. North Korea was an imminent threat. I remember showing a chart to the president-elect of the launches and missile tests that had occurred from January to October of 2016. That ramp, the cumulative number of tests in those 10 months were more than the previous 14 years combined. North Korea was on a completely different platform. They had to be addressed. It was Japan and the United States working together in the United Nations Security Council. They got it done. And only with Japan's leadership on the Security Council could get that done. 3 consecutively stronger sets of economic sanctions imposed on North Korea, sanctions they'd never felt before. And eventually the conversation went, whose button was biggest to decide to negotiate. So working together was clear to me that it's critical to the safety and security of the entire region, and we are so effective in doing that. As the ambassador said, we continue to advance our relations every day. I'm very optimistic that the alliance is entering a new phase, and together we're going to see our strength and posture, importantly, take the lead of the world. And with the threats that we see from China, Russia, North Korea at the doorstep, it's all more critical that we do so.
Thank you. Wow, that was a lot in there. 5 minutes into the program, and we got a wonderful summary of how the U.S., not just the U.S.-Japan relationship, but really what's happening in the Indo-Pacific, how it impacts the global alliance. And I understand, Ambassador Yamada, that you have talked about the U.S.-Japan relationship as no longer just the bilateral, but a global relationship and alliance. So in light of what both of you just talked about, and you have already mentioned this, Ambassador, of course, Prime Minister Kishida was here just a month or 2 ago. He had his historic address to the joint session of Congress. And Ambassador Yamada, if you will, please, from the Japan side perspective, or your perspective, what were some of the key messages? And how were the visit and speech received by the Japanese government and people of Japan?
Of course, the visit was a great success. During the visit, Prime Minister had very good substantive discussions with the President. He attended beautiful state dinner we attended together. And also he participated in many events celebrating strengths of Japan-U.S. relationship. But I thought the real highlight of the visit was his address to the joint meeting of Congress. And that was the second address to the Congress by Japanese Prime Ministers. Only second. It's rather difficult to be invited to talk to the joint meeting of the Congress. And this time around, Ambassador Hagerty Senator Hagerty helped us very much. He took the lead in organizing a letter signed by multi-party, by bipartisan senators, urging the Speaker to extend the invitation to the Prime Minister to address to the joint meeting of the Congress. And there, the invitation came. So thank you very much, Senator, for your leadership. And the main message of the Prime Minister's visit was, in one sentence, that Japan-U.S. relationship has evolved to be a global partnership based on strong sense of trust between our two countries. And Senator talked about the history of Japan-U.S. relationship. The first time I was here, 80s, 90s, the relationship was very much focused on bilateral issues, like trade frictions and so forth. The last time I was here, 2010s, the horizon of the relationship expanded to regional issues, as you mentioned, free and open Indo-Pacific was something we worked together on. But now it has evolved to be a global partner, especially after the Russian aggression into Ukraine. Japan and the United States working very closely together to uphold and strengthen a rule-based, or I should say, a free and open international order based on the rule of law. Japan and the United States are working together to meet all the international challenges as a trusted partner. So that was one strong message Prime Minister sent to the US public. And the other message was that this global partnership is partnership for the future. The two leaders confirmed that we are indispensable partners to each other in ensuring our economic competitiveness toward the future. They talked about the importance of working together on emerging technologies like AI, quantum computing, semiconductors, fusion energy, and space. So this, two pillars, the global partnership and the partnership for the future, are the main messages of the Prime Minister's address to the joint meeting. But he also said that the international community still needs the United States to continue to play a leading role in the world. But he also emphasized that the United States doesn't have to bear the burden alone. Japan will be there, shoulder to shoulder, to meet these global challenges as a trusted global partner. And I thought the message was received well by the Congress. I have to ask the Senator. But I thought the standing ovation was the longest and loudest when Prime Minister committed Japan to work with the United States, shoulder to shoulder as a global partner. So that way, Prime Minister's address was received by the Congress, and also the visit itself was received by the United States. That was very much reported back in Japan too, and I think the Japanese public saw that visit to be a great success as it further strengthened the very important relationship for Japan, which is a strong relationship with the only ally of Japan, the United States.
Thank you, Ambassador. And Senator, would you please reflect on what the Ambassador shared and perhaps share how Congress received the speech by Prime Minister?
Well, I'll start by answering the last question first, pretty very simple. It was extraordinarily well received. The support of the relationship is very bipartisan because I think my colleagues in the Senate and House of Representatives realize that the most important strategic alliance this country enjoys today is with Japan. Bar none, as Senator Mansfield would have said, but it is absolutely true. With respect to the opportunities before us, I would actually take us back in time just a little bit to underscore one of the examples of our working together on a global basis. And that is when we put in place the maximum security campaign to deal with Iran. This was the result of realizing that Iran never intended to comply with the terms of the JCPOA, so-called Iran deal. The Israelis actually uncovered the fact that they were continuing their nuclear program. We had exited the deal and took a different posture. That rather than giving them pallets of cash and encouraging them to do what we hoped they would do, we were going to impose maximum pressure on the regime in Iran to get them to stop funding terrorism and to get them to come back into the world order. It was my job as U.S. Ambassador to speak with my colleagues in Japan and implore them to stop buying Iranian crude oil. It's not easy to do when you have a 70-year relationship with a country like Iran. Prime Minister Abe saw the vision and the need and agreed. And this happened around the world, and we stopped the flow of funds to Iran. In fact, by 2020, Iran's foreign reserves were below $4 billion in total. Hamas and Hezbollah were widely reported as being broken. We moved the embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem. No war. We recognized Israel's sovereignty over the Golan Heights. No war. We took out Soleimani. No war. We even entered Abraham, of course. Thank you, John. We did work on that. No war. In fact, what we saw was peace and stability breaking out the region. That happened because we worked together with our allies. If the situation had changed now, and I won't go into the details there, but I'm going to talk about something that shows to me great promise. And that is what we began working on. Again, when I arrived in 2017 to Japan, we spent a great deal of time talking about our joint interest in making Japan an importer of U.S. LNG. Our energy security and national security are closely related. And Japan put in place billions of dollars of investment, both here in the Gulf region and in Japan, to import U.S. LNG, and guess what? To displace Russia. When you think about the future, we talked about transshipment facilities being built in Japan, and that we're capable of increasing our exports of clean U.S. LNG. Something amazing can happen. With our partners in Japan, some of the trading companies represented here today know exactly how to market this across the Southeast Asian region. We can put in place the biggest counterweight to the Chinese Belt and Road Initiative ever delivered. The continuous flow of clean energy in that arena. We'll displace coal, we'll reduce emissions immediately, but more important, it's not just building a piece of infrastructure. It's supplying the energy that the region would need for its daily economic growth. Together, the U.S. and Japan can do this. That's a vision we should be pursuing soon.
Thank you. It sounds like the U.S.-Japan relationship has evolved over the years, as both of you have discussed, but it has been a very constant and also stepping up to the need of the times. And currently, clearly, there are geopolitical needs, there are economic needs, there are business needs, there's also the people-to-people connection. And what I hear you both describing then is that the U.S.-Japan alliance is really a multifaceted and a complete alliance and friendship relationship. Is that an accurate statement, Ambassador?
I fully agree with that, especially now that I'm at this business community center meeting. I would just like to add business aspect of the relationship. You know, as I said at the beginning, people-to-people exchanges and multi-layered bonds between the two countries, including business partnership, is the pillar for this strong Japan-U.S. relationship. And I'm glad to see Japan-U.S. economic relationship is very strong at this time. Japan has been the largest investor, foreign investor in the United States, with about $800 billion of investment. Japanese companies are operating with about 1 million American workers, contributing to local communities, and working very closely with local governments, like the state of Tennessee. So that economic close relationship is the very important pillar for the bilateral relationship, and that is especially true in this state. I was told, recently told, that the more than 50% of the foreign direct investment into the state of Tennessee can come from Japan. More than 200 Japanese companies are operating in this state with 60,000 people of Tennessee. Tennessee can be the model for strong economic ties between Japan and the United States, and very much appreciate state of Tennessee's effort to further strengthen these economic ties. And also, clearly, there's hospitality, as the Consul-General mentioned, of the people of Tennessee, which persuaded many Japanese companies to choose Tennessee, the best place to operate in this country. So let me thank people from the business community and all the people of the state of Tennessee for your work in further strengthening the ties between the people of Tennessee and the people of Japan.
Senator, would you like to comment further on Tennessee's relationship with Japan in terms of foreign direct investment?
I think you all know I would, because every person I see in this audience has worked with me at some point to try to improve this. It's certainly a point of great pride for the people of Tennessee, Ambassador, that we've been able to strike such a strong relationship. The foundation of that relationship goes back to Lamar Alexander, my predecessor in the United States Senate. When he served as governor in the 1980s, he devoted a tremendous amount of time traveling to Japan, getting to know the people of Japan, and recruiting the first investments here. And that has continued to expand and grow. And I think what we see today, and I won't embarrass everybody that's worked in the Department of Economic Development or for the governor's office or in any other role, but most of you here have touched this relationship in a significant way. We feel it, we appreciate it, and we love the relationship. If I think about what's happening also in Japan right now, the Nikkei is now back. And there's several reasons for that. One of them is the semiconductor market. What's happening here in NVIDIA is not happening only in America, it's happening around the world. We're seeing that with the semiconductor business in Japan. But there's also a tremendous amount of Japanese investment here in America, just as there is in Tennessee. As those earnings are being translated back now into a weaker yen, we've seen the stock market take off. But this time, the PE ratio is 17 to 1. It's a much more realistic, substantive foundation. This is a very real economic engine that's underway, and I think it's attracting a lot of attention worldwide in a very positive way. I'd like to come back to something the ambassador said, though, about the global nature of the relationship between the U.S. and Japan, and just highlight the fact that I've seen a tremendous deepening of the trilateral relationship between the United States, Japan, and South Korea. Under the current Prime Minister, I was very pleased to see the trilateral take place. You, I'm sure, participated, Ambassador, with the Philippines, Japan, and the United States. And what we see at every turn is that standing shoulder to shoulder, we're going to present a wonderful partnership and a wonderful alternative, frankly, to some of the predatory practices of the Chinese Communist Party and the PLA that are taking place in the region. We work together in Ukraine, we will work together in the Middle East, we'll work together around the globe.
I'd like to just insert one comment on the trilateral relationship and just go back to what we were talking about earlier in this program with Dr. Auer's three children are from Korea, Japan, and the United States. And he was somebody that talked about this relationship probably decades before anyone else was talking. Just wanted to the audience. You know, gentlemen, I am very sad to say that our time is almost up. But I'd like to ask you, and I'm sorry, audience, I know we could sit here for hours. But if you could please, I will ask the ambassador first and then the senator closes. Just give us your final thoughts, whatever you like, whether it's about the U.S. Japan relationship, Dr. Auer, any messages for the audience today?
Thank you. First of all, thank you again for having me. Letting me participate in this very memorable occasion to honor Dr. Auer. And also, let me thank Japan-American Society of Tennessee for first including me today, but also for the work you do to strengthen business ties as well as people-to-people ties between the people of Japan and the people of Tennessee. I very much hope that this very strong ties between the state of Tennessee and Japan will further be strengthened, and whatever I can do to play a role in that continuous strengthening of the relationship, I would very much like to do. So looking forward to working with each and every one of you in the coming months. So thank you very much.
Masami, I have nothing but respect for Dr. Auer and what he's done to help build this foundation, but also I have tremendous optimism for the future. And
And the way I look at it, it is a hierarchy. And the foundation of the hierarchy is the economic relationship that we enjoy. The ambassador mentioned the tremendous investment that's taking place between our two nations. The United States is the #1 investor in Japan. Japan is the #1 investor in the United States. We're going to keep it that way. We're going to keep deepening our ties. In fact, I hosted an event at Stanford University back in November with John Rader's help. We put together an event with 40 CEOs from the United States, Japan, and South Korea, looking for ways to continue to deepen our economic ties. That is the foundation. And frankly, energy security is a big core of that. I'll keep staying on that message. But upon that is the foundation for building a strong military relationship. And I have to applaud Japan's decision to step up its expenditures on defense. We're looking for new ways to become more interoperable all the time. I'm encouraging more joint exercises every day. It's our interoperability and lethality that we need to focus on, not on purchasing exercise, but on coordinating our interoperability and our impact. And all of that delivers the ability to have stronger diplomatic engagement. And everybody in this room is participating in the diplomatic side as well as the economic side. And I want to say how much I appreciate it, how much promise I see. I just heard the statistic yesterday that when you ask Americans what country they most want to visit, Japan has now made it to #2. And I don't know what they're doing over in Italy these days, but I imagine at some point people will say, I like sushi better than pizza, and maybe Japan will become #1. But the people-to-people opportunities, I think, are tremendous, and thank you for all you do.
Gentlemen, please join me in thanking Ambassador Shigeo Yamada and Senator Bill Hagerty one more time.
Ladies and gentlemen, that concludes the program today. I know the ambassador has a 1:30 appointment up the hill, so he's going to need to make a pretty fast exit out of here. I want to thank everybody sincerely for being here. I have so many friends in this room, some old friends and some new friends. If you are from out of state, it's Memorial Day. Get some barbecue, some Tennessee barbecue. It's better, I promise. Otherwise, we look forward to seeing you at the next event. We have this room reserved, by the way, until 2 o'clock, and we have coffee back here. So please continue to hang out, enjoy yourselves, enjoy networking. Thank you once again.